Welcome to The Buzz. I'm Christopher Conover. This week, what a newly proposed Tribal Water Rights Act may mean for Arizonans. Since humans and our ancestors took those first steps, the Earth's lands and waters have profoundly influenced indigenous communities, nurturing culture, blending with spiritual, mental, and physical health. But in 1922, when governments allocated the waters in the Colorado River, those communities were left out. Now, after decades of disputes, the Northeastern Arizona Indian Water Rights Settlement Act has a strong chance of passing in Congress and may resolve significant outstanding water claims. Its cost is $5 billion, and it will be the largest Indian water rights settlement. Here to talk with us about how we got to where we are today is University of Arizona Professor Emeritus and water law expert, Dr. Robert Glennon. Can you walk us through the Colorado River Compact of 1922 and how states came to an agreement on water, how it could be divided? And yes, I know that could be a PhD dissertation, but we'll take the short version.
Sure. It divided the river into an upper basin and a lower basin. It provided that each basin would get 7.5 million acre feet. It made no mention of Indian tribes and nations. There was a fleeting nod to Mexico with, we'll get back to you and you'll get some of the surplus. The lower basin was also going to get an additional million acre feet out of this, quote, surplus. It was a time of naivete. We had no water projects. There was no water infrastructure, no storage facilities to speak of. And it was before we had any sense of climate change being caused by the emission of CO2. And to make matters worse, the compact itself is only 4 or 5 pages long. That's shorter than any apartment you might lease these days. It has plenty of ambiguous and vague terms in it. It was just a flat out mess. Then Arizona sues California in 1930. That does not end until 2006. So 76 years in one way or another, this lawsuit continued on. Then the tribes start to get some protection in this gigantic case, Arizona versus California. And in 63, in the decision, in 64, the decree, the Supreme Court recognizes substantial rights to 5 on-river tribes. Still nothing for the other tribal entities. The whole 20th century was really built on conflict and bitterness. And the 21st century has been one of negotiation and conciliation, which is really all to the good. Until very, very recently, the tribes not only weren't in the room, they weren't at the table, and they certainly weren't directing the agenda. And all of that has changed in the last 6 or 8 years.
What brought about that change, especially with the tribes?
There's a thing called the 2007 Seven Basin States Agreement that provides for cuts during times of shortages. And that expires in 2025, 26. And about 5-6 years ago, it was clear that there was a train wreck in front of us. There was talk of the lakes going to dead pool, of going below the amount of water needed to produce hydroelectric power. And that really brought everyone's mind to focus on we have to do better. And the tribes, in particular the Colorado River Indian tribes and the Gila River Indian community, stepped up and said, we can work with you on this. We can lease some of our water rights over a period of years. You can leave that water in Lake Mead. You can prop it up so that the catastrophe simply doesn't happen. And that continues to be the case. Those two entities, CRIT and GRIC, have substantial water rights that have been quantified, and they are savvy business people to deal with, and they want to make sure that their members are served well by the leadership.
We now have pending in Congress the Northeastern Arizona Indian Water Rights Settlement Act of 2024. It's considered pretty historic. And some of the things in there are not just water rights, but the ability to get water into some of the native lands that don't have a lot of water. This seems like a really, really big deal, and a continuation of that change in thinking when it comes to bringing the tribes to the table when it comes to water in Arizona.
The COVID horror demonstrated, particularly for the Navajo Nation and the Hopi tribe, that those two bodies of people suffered immeasurably more than others because they didn't have clean, available water. Couldn't even wash their hands, So it was terrible stuff. And this has been known, of course, for a long time, but I think it changed the optics to realize to get some attention to the situation, particularly on those two lands, and also without settling the Navajo and Hopi claims, it makes all other non-Indian claims a little bit squishy. What can you do if you have to worry about the Navajo and the Hopi claims out there? But one of the things that's significant about this, maybe the most significant, is that the Navajo and the Hopi came together to agree. And these are two entities with a century plus bitter contentiousness in how they deal with one another. And 10 years ago, I think Senator Kyle thought he had an agreement, and then it just blew up. And so this is a very big deal.
And as you said, long time coming. You and I talked about this about 10 years ago, I remember.
Yeah. No, this is a very big deal. So in addition to having a long title, it's a long bill. It's 112 pages long. Contrast the 4 or 5 pages of the Colorado River Compact. And Chris, it has 21 pages of definitions.
Which, having read a lot of legislation, you may need.
Leaving nothing to chance. But, it's not law yet. I mean, Senator Kelly dropped the bill on June 8th, July 8th, just about 3 weeks ago. So there are a lot of steps left before it becomes law. The big pieces, I think, Chris, of this act are, one, the amount of money that it puts on the table. It's about $5 billion. And that's easily double the amount of the next most expensive Indian water rights settlement. So that's both great, but it's also, will it turn out to be, too much? I don't know. The tribes will get 56,000 acre feet of water from the Colorado River. There will be a pipeline built from Lake Powell that will bring water to the Hopi and Navajo reservations. It sets a homeland up for the San Juan Southern Paiute tribe. It allows for leases and exchanges of water, which goes back to the drought contingency plans. So there's a lot in this bill should it become law.
That was water policy expert Dr. Robert Glennon. Republican Congressman Juan Ciscomani is the sponsor of the Northeastern Arizona Indian Water Rights Settlement Act. Congressman Ciscomani sat down with us to talk about what some are calling an historic piece of legislation. This has been an issue, native water rights, indigenous water rights, for a really long time. The Navajo has spent 60 years working on this. How did you get involved with this, especially as a first-year congressman or a first-term congressman?
Sure. Yeah, no, this is a historic step. No question about it. You mentioned it. decades in the making of this dispute going on, and it's something that generations before us have fought for. We've gotten close to being able to resolve it, and then it didn't happen. So it's been a lot of ups and downs. A lot of people have worked on this for a long time, a lot of patience, a lot of hard work, and focus on it. So in this time and moment, in my first term, I've made water issues and these kind of issues one of my priorities. And then lastly, also my work with both sides. I've worked well with Republicans and Democrats to get issues resolved. So these kind of things have just put me in a position where I have good relationship with leadership on our side of the aisle, but also with Democrats that I've worked on issues that want to solve problems like for veterans or water issues.
You mentioned the bipartisan nature of this. Congressman Grijalva's involved, Senator Kelly is involved, lots and lots of Arizona people involved. What made it the right time in Congress to finally get this done, hopefully?
A lot of credit goes to the leadership of the Navajo Nation, the Hopi tribe, and also the San Juan Southern Paiute tribe. I mean, these are people that really advocated for it. When they came to see me about this, they were right there, engaged, and they put in a lot of the work and more work to do on this, no question about it. But the timing was just right, and again, we happened to be in a position that we could be helpful and apply some influence on this. So held a hearing about this the last week. We were in D.C. last week, legislative hearing. The bill wasn't marked up yet, but I'm working with the leadership of the Natural Resources Committee to hopefully mark it up in September, and we're going to push this for it to happen as quickly as we can. The other exciting part, Christopher, on this is that how many people are supporting this. You don't see this often. Where obviously three different tribal nations are in agreement, and then with the state of Arizona as well. But then also you have the ag community. In the hearing last week, the ag community was there, just different groups saying, yeah, this is a good thing. It gives stability. It helps the tribes uphold their sovereignty and lays a path forward for what's coming, including the 2026 negotiations on the Colorado River water.
It's got a good-sized price tag, $5 billion, but well over half of that goes for water infrastructure, piping water into the Navajo Nation, where 40% of the homes do not have running water. So again, it's about more than just water rights. It's infrastructure and getting water to people.
It's infrastructure and water accessibility. One of the most impactful conversations I had was last week, actually. The groups came to see me in the office. A very sweet lady. She was 81 years old and told me, my entire life I've been having to carry water on my back, hauling water back and forth for my family. I want my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren to have a different future, and this is going to help us do that. I mean, there wasn't a dry eye in that hallway when she mentioned that. And, when you look at these things, how it's going to impact lives, it's funding for the pipeline from Lake Powell. It also proclaims approximately 5,400 acres of land within the Navajo Reservation as the San Juan Southern Party Northern area swell, and San Juan Southern Party Southern area that establishes those areas for the reservation. So you've got it's broad and it's water accessibility, and the price tag. Yeah, it's something that we talked about. It's not something that we easily or just automatically move on. The price tag was a conversation point, but when you look at the return on investment on this and the increase in quality of life of the thousands of people who will benefit from it, I think it's money well spent, and also what it's going to produce.
And as you mentioned, not necessarily a water issue directly, but now the San Juan Southern Paiute will get a reservation, assuming all of this goes through and gets signed.
That's right. They were one of the ones that were most excited about this as well for that very point. And so it's a win for all these different groups in different ways. And when you see that someone will have, will acquire and achieve that sovereignty that they've been seeking for as long as they have, it's something that we're proud to be supporting.
As you also mentioned, We have a deadline coming up in 2026 on Colorado River negotiations. Does this put the tribes in a better position to have a stronger seat at the table, which for so long they never had a seat, and only recently were they invited to these talks?
That's absolutely right. When you look at this, it gives them a strong seat at the table with the allocation determined. But it also gives, like I said, certainty and stability for everybody else. When you come to the table and negotiate on these issues that are generational negotiations, and you don't have as much certainty as you could have, it puts everyone in a tense position where you don't know what we're looking at exactly. But the more that we have of these parameters before walking into 2026 to have these conversations, we're going to be in better shape. And that is one of the main things that I heard from the other groups that I reached out to. What they really liked about this is to just add clarity, certainty, and stability to the issue. And everyone's, trust me, everyone's looking into 2026 for the Colorado River water negotiations then.
That was Southern Arizona Congressman Juan Ciscomani. You're listening to The Buzz. After the break, we'll hear from one tribal leader about how the legislation will allow them to build their nation. Stay with us.
Here at Shortwave Space Camp, we escape our everyday lives to explore the mysteries and quirks of the universe. We find weird, fun, interesting stories that explain how the cosmos is partying all around us. From stars to dwarf planets to black holes and beyond, we've got you. Listen now to the Shortwave Podcast from NPR.
Welcome back to The Buzz. I'm Christopher Conover. This week we're looking at the Northeastern Arizona Indian Water Rights Settlement Act. The San Juan Southern Paiute tribe has shared its territory with the Navajo Nation for more than 160 years. U.S. military campaigns against the Navajo in the 1860s forced thousands to move into the San Juan Southern Paiute territory for asylum. Because of the sheer number of Navajo tribal members living in their territory, much of the San Juan Southern Paiute tribe's lands were then annexed by the U.S. into the Navajo Nation's reservation. Tribal President Robin Preston Jr. joined us to talk more about that. A lot of this agreement deals with water, but for you all, this is a much bigger deal because, not that water isn't a big deal, but you finally get a recognized piece of land.
This water settlement means so much to the people of all three tribes, Navajo, Hopi, and San Juan. I think that it's a little bit more significant for the San Juan Southern Paiute tribe because we're starting from scratch. We have absolutely nothing. We still don't even, as of today, have our reservation completed. So with this settlement, it's going to ratify the treaty between Navajo and San Juan. It's, of course, going to ensure that we do have rights to the water coming from the Colorado River. But it also allows us to be able to start building our own infrastructure, our own economic development. And when I say that it means a little bit more to us than Navajo and Hopi is because they have their infrastructure already pretty much set up. So this is going to mean, one, we have a place to call home. We have our water rights secured. And it helps us to be able to start building our own land. I think currently the San Juan Southern Paiute tribe having to live within the borders of the Navajo Nation, we are not allowed to have home site leases. We are not allowed to get water to our homes. We are not allowed to get electricity for the simple fact that we don't have home site leases. And in order to get those, we have to have a home site lease. We currently don't have housing. We don't have anything. So it is a very big deal to us for all the opportunities it opens up for us. And with this settlement and the reservation coming to fruition, it gives them that opportunity to, maybe I do want to go home. Maybe I want to be able to take what I've learned outside of Indian country and bring it back for the betterment of our tribe. And that's pretty much, what it means to us. It continues to work from our past to our present for the future.
Some of the elders in the tribe said, "We've always wanted this, but we never thought we'd see this." And then with the youth, is and all areas have this problem, but with now having a reservation, still has to have the infrastructure built in. But does that help you keep them home and keep things growing?
Yes, and that's the only way we can move right now is forward. The only thing we can do, because again, we're coming from nothing, is grow. And it is going to allow our youth abilities that or opportunities that they hadn't had before. We have so many young tribal members who could qualify for what's known as the Chief Manuelito Award, which is a scholarship given by the Navajo Nation to their tribal youths. But unfortunately, that cannot be used by our tribal youth. So with this settlement and everything, it's going to allow us to get those funds to, again, provide that education so that they can come back and take my position and keep this going.
Because you did not have a reservation officially recognized and you were living on the Navajo Nation as a result, you couldn't get water, you couldn't get electricity to tribal members because they couldn't own the land. Does this agreement also allow for the infrastructure to bring the pipes for the water, etc., to those new properties?
Yes, because we hadn't been a recognized reservation before, anything that we tried to do would have to go through the Navajo Nation as well, because that's the surrounding areas. And with us not having a federally recognized reservation, that was the issue many of our tribal members faced, is working with the electricity or the water companies. It's always, you are within the boundaries of the Navajo Nation. You do not have that federal recognition of your land quite yet, so therefore we cannot work out an agreement with you. It has to include the Navajo Nation. So when this hopefully gets done by the end of this year, it's going to allow us to be able to govern ourselves and to pretty much put us in charge of our own destination and what we can do, which again is very, very important, very new to us, and it's going to be a good day when it finally happens.
For people who aren't familiar with the history of the San Juan Southern Paiute and the Navajo and the Hopi, they're going to see this and say, well, this seems so simple and obvious. Obviously it isn't. Why did it take so long?
I think it was just getting the different parties to be able to work together. There are a lot of historical issues between all three tribes, and I think that just speaks back to the magnitude of what we were able to accomplish by putting our differences aside, and not only with the three of us, but working with our surrounding communities such as Sholo, Flagstaff, and getting their approval in the ranches. I think we've had up to 32 letters of approval through APS, CAP, SRP in getting this done. So it is a huge, huge deal that we're finally to the point where we are. And a lot of the past negotiations, the money it costs to put into that, and the time, the effort, the constant going back and forth, for that to be able to be worked through, and for all of us, pretty much all of Arizona, being in agreement that this should pass, is huge. And I think that we could be a beacon of, hey, if they're able to do it, why can't we? Let's do what we need to do for the betterment of our people and put our differences aside and ensure our future is brighter than our yesterday.
Building takes time, and as you said, you have to build everything. Is there a timetable yet, or is it too early for that?
Well, I think that it's better to be prepared than getting to that point and saying, okay, now what are we going to do? So I've started reaching out to different departments to start looking at, our own healthcare, our own educational system, and our own housing. It has been a long process. Our people have waited too long for this, and I think that it's my responsibility to get this done as soon as possible, as right as possible, and working with our surrounding communities.
As this moves forward, we're going to assume the best, that it all gets signed in Washington and taken care of in a timely manner. Obviously, as you said, it doesn't solve all the problems, even with water. But does it help continue having people in Indian country now have a seat at that table for those discussions that for so long you all were denied?
Yes. I know that when I first came into office back in December, when I started attending a lot of these meetings, the common thing I came across was, we didn't know San Juan Southern Paiute was here. We heard about you, but we never saw you. And I said, well, I can't speak for the administrations before, but it's my belief that if we have a seat at the table, we also need to have a voice at the table. And I think that with our tribe being so small, it doesn't matter how small you are. If you're fighting for a good purpose, a good reason, then we need to be able to convey that. And like I said, if we do have a seat at the table, then we should have a voice at the table as well.
That was President Robin Preston with the San Juan Southern Paiute Tribe. If you want to listen to more issues surrounding water in Arizona, make sure to download AZPM's water podcast, Tapped. Season 3 is available now. And that's the buzz for this week. You can find all our episodes online at azpm.org and subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for The Buzz Arizona. We're also on the NPR app. Paulo Rodriguez is our producer. Our music is by Enter the Haggis. I'm Christopher Conover. Thanks for listening.
AZPM's original productions are made possible in part by the Community Service Grant from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by donations from listeners like you. Learn more at support.azpm.org. Thank you.